I never imagined betrayal could hide in plain sight, wearing the face of love. It hits with an ice-cold clarity in the middle of a familiar embrace, a poisonous whisper through the warmth, leaving you breathless and questioning everything you thought was real. Never in my darkest dreams did I think betrayal could masquerade as love, but there it was, bare and raw. Imagine being an unwitting part of a tragic play, where you didn't craft the script, but the spotlight's harsh glare was yours. That was me and Christine, basking in what I thought was our perfect marriage. Then, one morning shattered everything. An innocuous envelope, a lawyer's blunt demand for child support. A child, born long before Christine and I exchanged vows. The world inside my head turned upside down. A universe of deception erupted. This wasn't merely about money. It was secrets squirming like worms beneath the facade of my life. How did she orchestrate such a web of lies, void of guilt? Our life together disintegrated within my grasp as I groped for answers. Was love ever real amidst such deceit? Now, where was my place in this nightmare? I sat there, staring at the stinging words in black and white, feeling the room close in, my pulse a war drum in my ears. The sunlight streaming through the cracked blinds felt like static against my skin. I could barely believe my eyes. The legal jargon swam on the page, but the message was clear. Christine had been living a life I knew nothing about. The clinking of ceramic broke my trance as Christine walked in, her footsteps echoing off the tile like a cruel countdown. She moved with a calmness that ignited fury beneath my confusion. How could she carry on as if nothing had changed? As if that letter hadn't torn through the fabric of the world we'd built together. "Morning," she said, her voice smooth and untouched by the chaos swirling inside me. I couldn't respond, only lifted the letter with trembling hands, like I was holding a snake by its tail. "What is this, Christine?" She glanced at it briefly, her eyes meeting mine with a glint of something that felt almost like weariness. "I see you got it." There was no apology, only a resignation that stung even deeper. "You see I got it? That's all you have to say." My voice was sharper than I intended, cracking like ice underfoot. She placed the mug down and leaned against the counter, her arms crossed. "Nathan, calm down. Let's talk about it." "Calm down." My incredulity flared, a hot rush of anger. "I've just been blindsided with your whole other life." The betrayal sat heavy in my throat, a bitter weight. She sighed, looking past me, through me, to some distant point in the wall. "I didn't want to hurt you." I couldn't tell if it was the chill in her voice or the absence of remorse that began to harden something within me. "But you did. And not by accident. There's planning here, Christine." The room was a battlefield, every silence a taunt. Her detachment pierced. I slammed the letter onto the table, the echo resounding, amplifying the void between us. Memories of shared mornings, dinners, laughter, they fragmented and scattered like brittle shards inside me. Christine straightened, drawing a deep breath, as if preparing for a plunge. "There's a lot you don't understand, Nathan." "Then make me understand," I urged, the words' raw edges cutting out with desperation. "Because right now all I see is a lie." She shook her head slowly, almost sorrowfully. "It's not that simple." The room seemed to hold its breath. I could hear my own heartbeat loud and insistent. "It needs to be, Christine." Her hesitation stretched, and for a moment, her eyes softened, fluttering behind her defenses. And then, an imperceptible shift. I knew she wouldn't bridge the chasm she'd created. Not now. The silence pulsed, heavy and oppressive. My world, my trust, the person I thought I knew. Everything felt suspended, hanging by a thread, threatening to unravel with one wrong word. The hum of the engine was the only sound that filled the car's interior as I drove, aimless and lost. The rhythmic thud of the tires against the asphalt was comforting, like a pulse I could sink my own to. Each mile was an attempt to redraw the map of my life, a map now smeared and blurred by betrayal. Christine. Her name was an anchor, and yet, somehow, a blade. I thought I knew her. I thought we were building something real, something I could hold on to when everything else felt like sand slipping through my fingers. As the city lights blurred by the windows, I tried to sift through the years I had so willingly handed to her. Each shared moment felt like an intricate web, now revealed to be made of spun lies. Faint afterimages of picnics, shared glances across rooms, and whispers in the dark flickered and faded, leaving only a hollow ache in their wake. With her, laughter used to come easily. I remembered how she'd laugh with such abandon that I couldn't help but join in. Those memories were irrevocably painted now in other colors. I couldn't separate the laughter from the lies. It twisted inside me. A grotesque dance of joy turned to trickery. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles whitening against the tension building within my chest. The road stretched endlessly before me, a black ribbon unfurling, and there was a bizarre comfort in just moving forward. Every mile I drove seemed to stretch the distance between the man I thought I was and the man I had been deceived into being. There was so much time between us, filled with moments I had cherished and misconceptions I now crushed bitterly in my mind. I had to question everything. Her shy smile that first night at the art gallery, her fingers threading through mine. Had it all been a carefully crafted scene in her own play? Nathan, she'd say my name like it was imbibed with some sacred trust. That deception, the very breath that had carried sweetness, now seemed like poison. My memories were landmines, waiting to catch me off guard with their sharp, exploding truth. As I glanced in the mirror, expecting to catch a glimpse of the person I once was, I found only a stranger there. Calm and disbelief hung heavily in the car. Anger simmered, a low, rolling boil that promised to spill over, my own silent passenger. Headlights of passing cars smeared by, pulling shadows across my face. Each rush of light was a fleeting reminder that I was still in motion, alive, despite the devastation clawing at my insides. Somewhere far off, a realization started to form, a seed of understanding and anger that warmed against the chill inside me. But for now, all I could do was drive and let the road carry me forward. I sat in the corner of the dim bar, the worn leather seat creaking beneath me, uneasy as if it could sense the weight of words I was about to unleash. I watched the ice in my whiskey slowly melt, blending into the amber liquid, softening its bite. The dim light overhead flickered slightly, casting long, wavering shadows across the table like nervous ghosts. Across from me, Mike finally arrived, grinning as usual, that easy, stupid grin that could make anyone feel like everything might actually be all right. I offered him a tight smile as he slid in across from me, shrugging off his coat. His presence was comforting, a rare constant in the chaos that had become my life. We caught up lightly at first, the warmth of familiarity dulling the edges of what I had to say. But the longer I let the silence stretch, the more awkward it became, a balloon slowly inflating until it would inevitably pop. Finally, when I could stand it no longer, I took a long breath, letting the whiskey burn like truth down my throat, and blurted it all out. Everything. The sordid details poured out in a hushed tumble, each fragment a piece of the puzzle I desperately needed help solving. He leaned back, eyes widening as I unraveled the tangled web of mistakes and half-truths I had spun. His beer hovered forgotten, beads of condensation racing down the glass. She contacted me, I said, voice breaking slightly, a sharp edge to my words I hadn't expected. She says she wants child support, for that thing that happened last summer. Mike's expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief faster than I could raise my glass again. His voice, usually steady and grounding, stuttered out, "You mean she wants child support for that?" Each word loaded, heavy with implications I hadn't fully allowed myself to consider until that moment. The reality of it hit his voice like a sledgehammer, and I felt the weight all over again, fresh and crushing. The laughter and clinking glasses from around us felt distant, as if we were isolated in our own dismal universe. The jovial bar atmosphere, so at odds with the gravity of the moment, only heightened the absurdity of it all. I was grateful for the dim lighting, grateful it hid the naked vulnerability in my eyes. Mike shifted, finally taking a sip of his neglected beer, eyes still never leaving mine, as if trying to anchor me. "What are you gonna do?" he asked, tone softer now, a note of concern threading through his words, something genuine and raw. I shook my head, hands trembling slightly as they cradled my glass. "I don't know, Mike. I just don't know." The house was dark, save for the dim glow of the kitchen lights spilling onto the hallway floor. I stepped inside, the cool air prickling my skin as I closed the door behind me, sealing in the silence. My boots felt heavy against the worn wood as I hesitated in the entryway, senses on high alert for any sign of her. My breath was shallow, each inhale laced with trepidation. Nathan, Christine's voice drifted from the living room, soft and tentative. It hit me like a sudden gust of cold wind. I found her perched on the edge of the couch, her silhouette outlined against the flickering glow of the muted television. Her face was partially hidden, cast in shadow, but I could see the way her fingers twisted restlessly in her lap, as if weaving a fabric of plausible lies. "You're late," she said, peeling her gaze away from the floor to meet mine. There was something in her eyes. Was it regret, or just another shade of deceit? Suddenly, I was drowning in a sea between our past and this fractured present. I remembered her laughter, once bright and clear. Now it lingered ghost-like, an echo tainted by betrayal. I braced myself, grappling for words that wouldn't come. Trapped in the throes of confusion she had become so adept at sowing. "I had to stay to finish up the report," I said finally, the excuse flimsy, an armor that offered no real protection. She nodded, her lips curving into a weary semblance of a smile. "I know it's been hard these last few." She broke off, her voice trailing into the space between us like smoke dissipating in the air. "Christine," I said, my voice rough but barely above a whisper. There was more I wanted to say, questions that burned my tongue, but instead I let the thick silence stretch, tangling us in its hold. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice almost pleading. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Her words cut through me, razor blades slicing at the fragile remnants of trust. How often had she said those words, coaxing my anger into reluctant retreat, leaving me helplessly marooned between fury and nostalgia. I watched her, felt the tension dance in the breathless pause that followed. Against my better judgment, my heart lurched towards her, a treacherous traitor willing to believe in redemption. Why? The question escaped before I could catch it, carrying raw edges of bewilderment and pain. "I was lonely," she said, her confession a muted sob that barely cracked the air. "It was a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you." The room seemed to shrink, walls closing in as her admission hung heavy in the silence. I stood there, torn, a war raging inside me. Her words echoed, reverberating through the hollow chambers where my faith in us once resided. And beneath the turmoil, a quiet understanding stirred, whispering truths I wasn't ready to face. But even then, somewhere in the debris of everything we'd once been, I felt the hesitant flicker of a bridge, whispering the possibilities of something neither of us could yet grasp. Forks clinked against plates, a jarring soundtrack to the lies that sat between us like a banquet centerpiece. The dining room was warm, suffused with a soft glow from the ornate crystal chandelier overhead. It cast intricate shadows that seemed to dance over the tablecloth, mocking the false serenity of the scene. Beside me, Christine's laughter pealed, high and honeyed, as she recounted some trivial anecdote about the office. Her voice dripped with the ease of someone who knew all the right notes to hit to keep everyone comfortable, everyone but me. Her father, a gruff yet distinguished man, sat directly across from me, inspecting me with the intensity of a jeweler evaluating a dubious gemstone. "So, Nathan," he began, his voice measured yet carrying an edge that sliced through the evening. "How's work these days?" The question landed heavy, full of expectation. I could feel Christine stiffen slightly beside me, a silent warning to tread carefully. "It's fine," I replied after a beat, plastering on a semblance of a smile. "Keeps me on my toes." "Good," he nodded, taking a sip from his wine glass. "Keeping busy is important. Can't afford to be complacent." The subtext was there, a subtle jab that I pretended didn't sting. Christine's mother, a delicate woman with eyes that mapped everyone's secrets, cut in with practiced grace. "Christine tells us you've been thinking about starting your own business?" My heart thudded. Another of Christine's fabrications meant to paint us in a light that never existed outside these walls. "Yeah," I lied, embracing the now familiar tightness in my chest. "It's something we talk about sometimes." Christine's hand slipped into mine under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze, her nails biting into my skin. Her touch was an unsettling blend of possessive and supportive, a silent mandate to conform. Her brother, a man molded in the image of their father, cleared his throat, leaning forward. "Sounds exciting. Risky, though." "I guess it could be." My words trailed off, lost in the monsoon of clinking silverware and murmured affirmations. Inside, though, I was shrieking. It was all too perfect, too rehearsed, like actors nailing their lines on the opening night. Eyes flicked back and forth as the conversation ebbed and flowed, each person expertly navigating the river of half-truths and appearances. Beneath the table, I curled my toes, grounding myself against the white noise of their collective willful ignorance. Each nod, each polite inquiry, and genial smile seemed just a shade shy of sinister, complicity wrapped in a genteel veneer. I realized then how utterly isolated I was, trapped in a tableau vivant of polished veneers and hidden cracks. Christine leaned closer, whispering, "You're doing great." Her breath warm against my cheek felt both comforting and confining, like a silk noose tightening ever so gently but irrevocably around my neck. As another round of laughter erupted, all I could think was how distance never felt so oppressive. In a room full of people, I've never been more alone. The lawyer's chair was stark, uncomfortable, as if to mirror the choices looming over my fractured future. It dug into my back with unforgiving insistence while I tried to focus on the meticulously ordered desk in front of me. Each precisely stacked document was an accusation, asking me why I was here, what I hoped to achieve by entertaining these thoughts. The room felt suffocating, airtight, with the quiet hum of an overhead light casting a cold, surgical glow over everything. Across from me, the lawyer was a study in calm professionalism, no outward judgment, just the steady gaze of someone who'd seen it all before. His polished desk separated us like a chasm, one I needed to cross, but wasn't sure I was ready to. He hadn't spoken yet, waiting for me to initiate, to give him something more than my name and the barrage of silent woes wrapped around my thoughts. My heart pounded in erratic rhythm, threatening to burst out with every breath I held too long. If only the decision could come as easily as my pulse. If only it didn't feel like tearing apart my skin, my connective tissue, to admit the truth. The word came out choked, foreign. Didn't I spend years learning to keep this ache buried? The lawyer nodded, his expression offering a muted encouragement. My hand found the surface of the chair, gripping it until my knuckles paled, seeking any anchor as the room spun with implications. Things at home. I started again, forcing the world to align through the haze. It's complicated. Lame, I thought, even as the syllables leaked out. Was anything ever uncomplicated, though? The lawyer leaned forward, perceptibly pulling me back to the present, back to this sterile room, and away from the memories that clawed at my resolve. "You're considering filing for divorce," he stated calmly, effectively puncturing the bubble of doubt. Each syllable landed with the gravitational force of a 10-ton truck, flattening my excuses, my hidden hope, leaving me to reckon with the stark, undeniable truth. I nodded, partly because I couldn't bring myself to say it, couldn't yet unravel the thread of affection still tied to my heart. There were moments with her that floated to the surface, laughter spilling over shared jokes, her silhouette in morning light, whispering that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all lost. But those moments were trickling sands in an hourglass I couldn't flip. Each fleeting instance drowned in a sea of nights listening to silence weigh us down, elbowing space between what was and what could never be. Would filling out these papers sever ties or solidify regrets? The lawyer handed me a glossed-over pamphlet, his voice wrapping around me, clinical but not unkind. "It's not an easy decision. No one's rushing you." The clock ticked conspiratorially, its unyielding hands reminding me that time only begets more time, each second devoid of mercy. I took the pamphlet, feeling its cool smoothness, only realizing then how much I was trembling. No one was rushing me, but standing still would only leave me buried beneath the rubble of choices unmade, unable to breathe. I swallowed hard, anchored by the weight of my hope and fear, knowing this first step was both beginning and end. Laughter echoed through the park, each peal a dagger, slicing through the hollow ache where my own dreams lay bleeding. I sat on a worn wooden bench, its paint chipped and tired, much like the heaviness in my chest. The late afternoon sun warmed my face, but its light felt more like a spotlight on a stage where I no longer belonged. I watched as a little girl with braids chased a fluttering red balloon, her giggles trapped in an infectious loop that threatened to undo me. I couldn't look away. Here, innocence danced freely, too unaware to know the weight of shattered promises and stolen futures. I closed my eyes for a moment. Fatherhood. The word stretched out inside me, touching every corner with a tender longing, now bruised by the cold slap of reality. Christine's betrayal had gutted that dream, leaving only the phantom limb of aspirations we once cradled together. Each memory was a slideshow projected against my eyelids, flickering images of potential. The nurseries we had sketched in our minds, vacations we plotted on maps with hopeful pins, and names whispered just below hearable noise. Opening my eyes again, the sharp focus of the present cut through the haze. A couple pushed an ornate stroller along the path, their heads bent close in conspiratorial whisper. Once upon a time, that had been Christine and me. Two conspirators against a too-fast world, planning futures over glasses of cheap wine and takeout boxes. But the plan we charted together had veered off course. The road buckled under the weight of lies. I didn't want to remember her, but my mind wouldn't let go. The consistency of betrayal, like a persistent itch, refused relief. Her laugh now seemed synthetic, echoing in memory as she confessed, tearing apart the narrative we'd pinned with naive optimism. There was a moment, a sharp intake of breath, before it all crumbled. I had watched her face, searching for signs of the truth beneath the mask, but everything felt like theater, each gesture rehearsed for maximum devastation. A ball rolled to my feet, pulling me back to where grass was real, where children shouted in gleeful chaos. I picked it up, tracing the stitching with my thumb, and looked up as a small boy ran towards me. His face was flushed, eyes bright with the kind of happiness that felt almost palpable. "Can I get it back?" he asked, breathless and trusting, his innocence unspoiled. "Sure, buddy." My voice surprised me, steady and unbroken. I tossed the ball lightly. His thanks was brief, his attention already refocused on the chase. He ran back to his world, but he left me with something. In that fleeting interaction, I felt a stirring. I could call it resilience. Perhaps, in the abandoned promises and derailed paths, there was space to build anew. Not the same, not yet whole, but a place where trust and dreams might, one day, find their breath again. The room felt like it was shrinking, like the walls were wrapping themselves around us. The air was thick and hard to swallow, charged with everything unsaid. Christine stood by the window, arms folded, staring into the night, as if the darkness offered some escape. Her silhouette was fragmented by the streetlight shadows, but I could still see the tension in the set of her shoulders. I stepped closer, my voice barely more than a tremor. "Christine," I began, swallowing the knot in my throat. "Why can't I see myself in your life anymore? Why am I the stranger at the threshold of my own heart?" The question hung in the air, a fragile thing that demanded to be heard. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting mine, hard and unyielding. "Nathan, this isn't what I wanted," she said, her voice low. "I never planned for it to be like this." A part of me wanted to hold on to the anger, to let it shield me from the hurt. But it was slipping away with every word she spoke. "Then tell me," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Tell me why it feels like we're just playing house, pretending it's all fine when it's anything but." She sighed, a sound that seemed to empty the room of what little warmth remained. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted, and there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or fear. I stepped even closer, feeling the weight of everything that passed between us. "I'm standing here, ready to fight for this," I continued, my heart pounding in my chest. "But I need to know you're in this with me. That you want me, enough to wield the truth." Christine looked down, and for a moment, I thought she might turn away again. But then she spoke, her voice strong and unwavering. "I've been pulling away, Nathan. You're not imagining it." The words hit like a blow. I staggered, my mind scrambling to grasp their full meaning. "So what now?" I asked, hearing the desperation in my voice. "Do we just stand in this limbo forever, or do we wade through the cold, hard truth?" A silence settled between us, heavy and palpable. Her gaze locked onto mine, and I could see her resolve, her own battle raging beneath the surface. "If you're asking me to decide here and now," she said, "then yes, I'm willing to face whatever lies between us. But know that once everything's out," I interrupted, stepping even closer until there was no space left to vanish into. "I'll decide whether there's a road left to walk or just rubble." She nodded, barely perceptible, but enough to indicate she understood. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The truth would determine what remained. Truth, and, if we're lucky, a little love buried under the debris of what we once were. I stand at the mouth of the crossroads, the early morning chill nipping at my skin like tiny, insistent teeth. The dawn sky bleeds soft pinks and oranges, painting a new canvas over the remnants of a night spent wrestling with shadows. My breath fogs into clouds that disappear almost instantly, much like the fears I've dragged here with me, dissolving as quickly as they came. Here I am, about to step into something that looks a lot like the future, but can't quite bring myself to give it a final, definitive name. I can feel the roughness of the ground beneath my boots, each tiny stone pressing thoughts of the solid surface that will continue carrying me forward. The air is crisp, clean, untouched by the fraught voices that pressed from all sides in the claustrophobic moments of indecision. The scent of damp earth and freshly cut grass fills my lungs. It's a raw, grounding reassurance that reminds me I'm still, in many ways, just this one small piece of a vast, waiting landscape. My heart isn't racing anymore, not in the frantic, futile rebellion I felt just last night. No, it's a steady drum, beating in quiet cadence with the inevitable change settling over me like a second skin. This is the moment I've circled around and around, overthinking every turn, every detour that could lead back to where I began, spinning in anxious spirals. But now, it's as if the path forward no longer seems a glaring fork, but a quiet road to myself, one I could finally choose for my own sake. I let my eyes trace the horizon ahead, the merging lines of earth and sky inviting, unthreatened by my uncertainties. The fear of stepping into the unknown still whispers, but its grip is gentler now, allowing room for a fragile sense of new beginnings. Voices from yesterday echo softly, lingering like old friends as I take my first hesitant step. Would they approve, shake their heads in knowing displeasure? It matters less now, their opinions drowning in the rushing sound of my decision's acceptance. There's a catharsis, a vulnerable honesty blooming with each inhale, amplifying the quiet conviction that unfolds inside me like a book's dog-eared page being smoothed out, ready to be read again in due time, with less prejudice, with more understanding. The breeze sweeps against my face, a lover's caress weaving through the mistakes and the laughter, the moments that stitched my past's quilt together. It's a salve, the air, assuring me it's okay to look back at what was and still choose to step forward without stumbling over regret. So here I stand, a mix of what was and what could be, ready to move, ready to meet what lies beyond the gentle curve of the road disappearing into the horizon. In this strangely serene moment, it seems like those whispers finally hush, leaving me with a single, liberating truth. I am the path, and I am its walker, drawn not by certainty, but by a choice finally made. The cafe where we'd agreed to meet was almost empty except for the hum of the espresso machine and a couple of lingering patrons. I watched her sip her coffee across the table, the steam curling upwards like the last wisps of something we once had. The small gestures, the familiar way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, felt like echoes from another life. Our eyes met, a silent acknowledgement hanging between us like a thin veil of truce. "How have you been?" Her voice sounded softer, less guarded than I remembered. "Okay," I replied, hearing the slight tremor in my own voice. "You?" She nodded, tracing the rim of her cup with her finger. "Same. You know, just trying to figure things out." A beat passed, neither of us rushing to fill the silence. There was an understanding now, not the desperate cling of old lovers seeking apologies, but a gentler connection formed on the ruins of what used to be. It wasn't the absence of anger, but perhaps its transformation, something we'd both learned to carry differently. I was grateful for the change, however thin and fragile it seemed. "I miss you, Nathan," she said eventually, her voice a thin line, almost invisible. "Not in that way anymore, I guess. Just, I know." I cut in, a strange calm settling over me. "I miss you too." For a moment, that was enough. Just sitting there, acknowledging the loss without trying to patch it up with false hopes or worthless promises. It was then that I realized something in me had shifted. The conversation wasn't about rekindling past flames, but about extinguishing them gently, with respect. We talked some more, about work, mutual friends, future plans that no longer included each other. With each word, I felt the weight of the past uncoil slightly from my shoulders. I could sense she was feeling it too, the rough edges of our shared history smoothing out, becoming part of the landscape rather than obstacles in our path. "Take care of yourself, Nathan," she said as we stood up, her eyes holding mine for a second longer than may be necessary. "You too, Christine. You too." Outside, the air had turned crisp, autumn leaves scuttling across the street like tiny messengers of change. I watched her walk away, her figure gradually dissolving into the busy city life. As I turned to leave, a strange lightness settled in my chest. A heartbeat before, there was only unresolved tension. Now, there was something else. Room to breathe, to grow. As I walked away, the weight of the past didn't lift, but it felt different, more bearable. One last breath of the old before I stepped into the new. The future, no longer mapped by shadows of what had been, stretched open like a blank page. I took a deep breath and stepped into the promise of uncertainty, each step lighter, yet deeper in its stride.